But you're continuing to watch the agenda. Thank you so much for staying with us. All right, the annual celebration of press freedom will be marked across the globe today. World Press Freedom Day 2021 comes amid a global pandemic that's posing huge challenges for the media. To speak to us now on the challenges, we're joined by Professor Tawana Kupe. He is the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of Pretoria. Thank you so much for making the time.
Good morning, Desiree, and good morning to your viewers.
You wrote an article yesterday, I think it's in the media today as well, where you say everyone loses out if the media don't grow with the times. I'm just interested, the theme this year is information as a public good. Interesting that this comes out at the same time that President Cyril Ramaphosa was at the State Capture Commission last week, and he made a point to thank the media, the South African media, for their role in ensuring that public officials are brought to book. What's the significance of this year's celebrations of World Press Freedom Day?
So I think the significance is that we live in an environment where the media and communications environment is greatly disrupted. So, and this manifests itself in two things: a crisis of journalism and a sustainability crisis of the world. Your climate change, pandemics, inequality, poverty, increasing abuse of a range of human rights across the world. In the crisis of journalism, what we find is because of the growth of the internet, social media, and fake news, the information is now poisoned. It does not, in a sense, give the public the kind of fact analysis and reflections that are necessary for them to exercise their rights and also to hold politicians accountable. So, and journalism, the disruption in the journalism environment also includes, by the way, underfunding of journalism, lack of ethics, media companies that actually, in a sense, do not advance the public interest.
So just in terms of those disruptions, on the one hand, journalists have the responsibility of ensuring that the public knows what's happening. How are journalists keeping up with the disruptions?
No, I think that it's a crisis. They are actually really struggling. The best of journalists who operate in the public interest are really pushing against all odds. Underfunded media companies, under-resourced and all of that. Then, of course, facing the tsunami of fake news and fakers. And also politicians who, by the way, also often aid the fakers. You know, you have the Donald Trumps, the Boris Johnsons and Bolsonaro, and also on our continent, by the way. So while I'm happy that the president was praising investigative journalism and as something that is patriotic, the president needs to come to the party and the government needs to come to the party in fully resourcing the SABC, for example, which is an organization that reaches the entirety of the public. Because a public broadcaster actually, ironically, is the best instrument for advancing public information as a public good. Because it shouldn't be driven by commercial motives, and politicians should readily accede to their demands for information, for interviews. They should be giving multiple interviews, and they shouldn't be, in the end, making the SABC, in a sense, become like, you know, small privately funded investigative journalism agencies. What we need is a fully funded public broadcaster, fully funded media, and supporting general in access to information, which is important for citizens to exercise their rights.
Of course, just to touch on the president again, in his weekly missive that comes out on Mondays, he talks about World Press Freedom Day. He says quite a few things, but one of the things he highlights is a report that came out from Reporters Without Borders that came out last week, the World Press Freedom Index, a barometer of the state of media freedom across the globe. And in the report, it says that journalism is totally blocked or seriously impeded in 73 countries or constrained in 59 others. What are your thoughts about media freedom in South Africa, in the continent and in the world?
So I think that, I like to use comparison of the late 80s and the early 1990s. That was a robust period of an advance of media freedom all across the globe, if you like, including in the former Soviet Union, which collapsed. You found that there was what we call liberalization of the media. People removing restrictive laws, journalists becoming much freer, new broadcasting stations, and the multiplicity and diversity of broadcasting stations. I'm afraid that there's been a regression in the last so many years. And that also people have learned new tricks of controlling the media, including governments that, on the face of it, ascribe to democratic values and to a human rights dispensation. And then add to that the late 1990s, this is also the growth of the internet and social media. The media face, if you like, a pincer movement of people regressing from democratic norms, and on the other hand, the media also being undermined on their financial basis, and also being, in a sense, undermined by the so-called social media and the explosion of fake news, fake information and disinformation. You see it even now during the pandemic, that what is spreading a vaccination hesitancy is a lot of fake news and disinformation. That publicly funded media operating in the public interest, information as a public good, is not able to counter as much as we would want.
You mentioned the fake news in your article. You talk about people are soaking up lies and disinformation. What's to be done about this?
Yes, a number of things, really. I think strengthening public media is one. That means, strong funding of no strings attached public funding of public media. And in the privately owned commercial media, I think that also calling out the private owners to invest more and not take out profits to take as dividends, for example. Strengthening of the training of journalists as well. And then also strengthening of media literacy and critical media awareness in the generality of the public. We can no longer afford a situation where the skilled curriculum, all the way from the beginning, does not include information literacy, media literacy, and the ability to discern where information comes from. Because the fake news is so well packaged that even experts often find themselves forwarding things that are actually fake. So we need to relearn how we relate to information. And critical media literacy is going to be important in that. You must remember one thing: freedom of expression belongs to everybody. You can't just leave it to journalists and the media, especially the ones that have been disrupted in this kind of environment. So it is an emergency situation requiring a reimagining of how we relate to communications, information, and media.
You're the head of a big institution in the country. How are you allowing freedom of expression in your institution?
No, what we did is through our Anti-Discrimination Act and through the fact that we are also covered under Section 16.2 of the Constitution, academic freedom is covered. Academics and students here are free to publish things that they are based in fact, based in their research, and to disseminate them in books, articles, and in media platforms like yours. And also take the lead in writing articles like this, in a sense, expressing an opinion that is reasoned, we are trying to make logical facts to enable people to see in the institution that is what we ought to do. We're also driving something else, Desiree, which is to actually what we call translation. Because the ordinary public cannot read books and journal articles that we write. They are for the experts by and large, except the ones that are open for the public. We also try and write a public media articles arising out of our books, our journal articles, and the research that we do. Because dissemination of information freely strengthens freedom of expression, increases the store of knowledge for the public, is a contribution to information as a public good, and so on and so forth. So a free atmosphere of seminars, discussions, events, and all of that, it promotes freedom of expression for our society as a whole.
Yes, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Desiree.
Professor Tawana Kupe is the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of Pretoria. He wrote an article where he says everyone loses if the media don't grow with the times, commemorating World Press Freedom Day.